Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Mayor Charlie Sisitsky, I'd like to welcome you to Waushakum Beach to the second design meeting that we're having here. So I just wanted to introduce a couple of people real quick. We have Scott here with us from Bishop Land Design, who's going to walk us through the program. We have the ORS group here that's going to talk a little bit about water quality. We also have conservation representation here that can help to speak to some things and answer a few questions if you'd like. So yeah, it's just, this has been an amazing process. I think we have an amazing design here to start to work with. We do, again, want to get everyone's feedback in this stage of the design, pros and cons. We'll have, Scott will walk us kind of through the whole design here. Is there anyone in the audience who will need translation services? We do have that available if anyone needs it. Okay, great. Yes, please.
Boa noite a todos. Em nome do prefeito Charlie Sisitsky, nós estamos aqui para discutir os conceitos de design, né? Tem as pessoas responsáveis pela conservation, a ORS, Parks and Recreation, e nós gostaríamos de saber se alguém necessita de tradução simultânea para o português ou para o espanhol. Se há alguém que necessita tradução espanhol ou português. No?
Thank you. We also have Leslie White Harvey, City Councilor for this district, who would just like to say a quick hello and a couple of words.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone for coming. My name is Leslie White Harvey, and I'm the District Councilor for this neighborhood, District 8. I'm really happy to see a lot of families here. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what the design and all the statistics on what families are interested in having. I want to thank the Parks and Rec Department for hosting this meeting right on the beach, and it's a lovely evening. So looking forward to hearing from the design company what you think is best for us, and making sure that the park actually reflects what our entire community needs, all our families. We have a very diverse community, so just keep that in mind. We still may have a few people who may have some input because they're not able to come, so I hope we get a little chance, a couple of weeks or so, of opportunity for some families who are not here to kind of express some of the things they may need. So thank you very much and welcome. Happy to be at our home, District 8, or GEM, Waushakum Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one quick announcement too. We do have some ice water over here if anyone needs any in the cooler here. So if you'd like to grab one of those, you can. So we'll get things started. Why don't we with Scott, and he will walk us through the design.
Sorry, yeah. So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
One more announcement.
Yeah. So I'm Allison Elliott. You guys may remember me from when I was at DPW and the stormwater, and working hard on the project that you see in active construction now. We're so happy to have all of you here tonight. There's so much going on, so I do want to just give you guys quick little updates on a few things. Our stormwater infiltration project, Sumco is the contractor. They've been doing a fantastic job. I'm sure you guys have been checking up on them. We're looking forward to them wrapping up the first part of this project in about 2 weeks. So you'll see them demobilize from the site. We are waiting a bit lead times for the actual bridge, but they will be done with the swale part very soon. We are planning to, once they demob from that part, we're gonna open up the grass side so people will have access over there. So I want to assure you that all that is going to happen. If there's questions after we go through some of the other presentation tonight, I'm happy to go take a peek with you and explain in more detail what exactly everything is that's going on over there. That project is funded by a 319 grant from EPA. It's administered by DEP. They are so excited about this project. They are coming out to visit us on Monday. As part of that, we wanted to make sure that we are providing educational features. And so we've invited ORS here tonight. So Ben, if you can, I think it will make sense for all of us if, Ben, you can do your portion of education for the group, and then we'll do this part so then we can have time to interact and go through Scott's design together.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Sure. Right. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Ben Wetherill. I'm with ORS. It's the Organization for the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord Rivers. We're located in Concord, and we basically work on trying to improve the water quality in all three of those rivers, Sudbury, Assabet, and then they come together and form the Concord River. Our mission is to make the rivers swimmable, fishable, recreatable, etc. We mostly focus on rivers, but we do support any activities like this or water quality improvements in the watershed, and Lake Waushakum is in the Sudbury, Assabet, Concord watershed. So Allison asked me to come and give a little talk about what water quality means, and specifically for Lake Waushakum, I think people ask about bacteria. Just again, background on ORS. ORS started in 1986. We started with a focus on the Assabet rivers. We were trying to manage phosphorus or nutrient levels in the Assabet River, which were creating huge mats of algae and excess biomass in the rivers. We expanded then to the Sudbury and Concord in about 2000, 2005, and we started a bacteria monitoring program in 2019, so relatively recently, but since 2019 we've been monitoring bacteria in all the rivers also, in addition to the nutrients that we were monitoring before. Background on our bacteria monitoring program: we started in 2019. We monitor six locations around the rivers. So this is a map of the watershed, of the Concord River watershed. Starts the outflow of all the water here in all three rivers all comes out in Lowell into the Merrimack River. And we have the Sudbury here on this side and the Assabet on this side coming together to the Concord River. All the water that drains into the Concord River is part of what we call the Concord River Sudbury, Assabet, Concord watershed. And we're interested in managing that water quality. As I said, we've been monitoring bacteria in the rivers in 6 locations in the river since 2019. We have found a variety of different conditions in the rivers. 3 locations have fairly poor water quality for bacteria. That's of the locations that we're monitoring. That's Ashland, Maynard, and Lowell. And we've been doing special source tracking studies of those 3 locations to try to figure out where the source is of the bacteria that's causing the high levels in those locations. We did a source tracking study in Lowell first, and then in Maynard last year, and this year we're working in Ashland, taking extra samples along the river, and again just trying to find the source of the bacteria there. It's surprisingly hard to find the sources because it's disparate. Oftentimes it's not a point source, comes from many different locations, but I'll talk again a little bit more about the causes of that. We've also found some very good locations, some locations that have very good water quality in terms of bacteria, in terms of E. coli bacteria, which is for swimmability. About 26 miles of the rivers are federally designated as wild and scenic rivers, and that means they're protected. There's restrictions on building up to near the edges of the rivers. A lot of support for trails and recreational access, but basically that wild and scenic for the Sudbury starts in Saxonville, and continues all the way up into Billerica on the Concord River. And the sections of the river that are in that wild and scenic section, especially the downstream sections, are the sections that have the very good water quality, in bacterial water quality. And it's really just proof that protecting the rivers from development is the biggest thing you can do to protect the water quality. And we are about to announce on Tuesday we're going to have an event at the Bedford Boat Ramp in Bedford on the Concord River, an event where we're going to announce that that section of the river is swimmable. Since 2019, it has never. We've sampled it 60 times every 2 weeks for each summer, and that section of the river has never had a bacterial exceedance in that whole period. So it's really it's a good situation. It's something we'd like to shout out about, and it's also a really big shout out to the benefit of the wild and scenic sections of the rivers and the protection that they give. So anyway, yeah. So up there, basically perfect water quality, bacterial water quality. In the Sudbury area, almost perfect. So very good. So again, all through that wild and scenic section. I'll pass this map around if anybody wants to see it. You can just pass it around. That's the map of the aspect. So getting into the bacterial, the educational part, we talk about bacteria. We talk about water quality and bacteria sort of generally. The important thing that I think I want everybody to go away with today is that there are two types of bacteria for water quality, and they often get confused. And they have similar sources, but different, but are fairly significantly different. One is fecal indicator bacteria. So it's bacteria that is an indication of fecal contamination, of waste. The waste from any warm-blooded animal could produce this, what's called fecal indicator bacteria. Examples of fecal indicator bacteria are E. coli, Enterococcus, fecal coliform. Those are the sort of the three that people you hear the most. E. coli is the one that you'll hear about the most in this type of an area in freshwater conditions. What they are is those are indicator bacteria that indicate to us that there's some contamination in the water, contamination that from the guts of animals that would have or could have pathogens related to it. Disease-bearing pathogens along with it. So the bacteria itself is not necessarily the pathogen. We hear about E. coli causing disease from lettuce. There are many different strains of E. coli, and so the strain of E. coli that is in lettuce, in produce, can make you sick. But not all E. coli are pathogenic, but what they are is they're indication of the fact that there's other pathogens in the water that came from the same places the bacteria came from. So that's fecal indicator bacteria. The other type of thing that we call bacteria is cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria are not fecal indicator bacteria. Cyanobacteria are a bacteria-like organism. They're a prokaryote. Bacteria are prokaryotes. Animals and plants are eukaryotic. If you're familiar with biology, they have eukaryotic cells. But cyanobacteria are a bacteria-like organism. They are basically one of the original organisms on the planet. They are a bacteria-like organism. Not all bacteria can do photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria can create energy from sunlight, and they have a photosynthesis properties. So they can grow as a result of sunlight, and that's what they get their energy from. Cyanobacteria do not come from the guts of animals. They come from the environment itself. They are always there. There's always some cyanobacteria in all water environments, everywhere. The issue with cyanobacteria is when they bloom and when they create huge volumes of organisms, and they become a nuisance. And we often refer to cyanobacteria as algae, as blue-green algae. It's kind of a misnomer because it's not really an algae. Algae is a plant. We put it in the same bucket as what we call harmful algal blooms. So cyanobacteria is considered a harmful algal bloom. Other types of plant algae, like water lilies, or like duckweed, which is a smaller type of a water lily type plant, can be called harmful algal blooms, or can be called harmful algae, and can create blooms, which we call harmful algal blooms. And there's other algae that also can be lumped in, can produce more troublesome algal blooms. Algae and cyanobacteria, they grow as a result of nutrients in the water. They basically give the cyanobacteria and the algae something to feed on, nutrients, primarily phosphorus and nitrogen. And with warmth, with nutrients and warm water and sunlight, cyanobacteria can grow. E. coli and fecal indicator bacteria do not grow in the environment, not normally, unless there's some unusual conditions. They generally do not grow in the environment. They come from the intestines, and they die off in the environment after some period of time. But cyanobacteria do grow there and come from there. So there's those two different sources. E. coli are from animals. They do not grow in the environment, but they indicate waste in the water. Cyanobacteria are from the environment. They simply indicate the availability of food and warm and the correct conditions to grow in the water, and they increase therefore. And when they create a bloom, that's trouble for us. The dangers for us are E. coli. E. coli and fecal indicator bacteria dangers are they indicate pathogens, right? So you could get sick, you could get intestinal, you could get stomach ache, skin rashes, various things from the pathogens that are in the water that came from waste, that basically came from other humans or animals who had diseases that might be passed to you when that waste is in the water. From cyanobacteria, the danger is from the toxins that they produce. There's a couple different issues. One is that the danger to you from the toxins they produce. Some cyanobacteria, not all, but some cyanobacteria produce a number of different toxins. They can affect your nerve, give you nerve damage, liver damage in serious cases, or just simply, again, skin diseases or things. So they produce these toxins that we need to watch out for. They also, harmful algal blooms also affect the ecology of the water body for other water organisms, for fish, for example. So harmful algal blooms will grow, and then when they die, they basically consume all the oxygen as they're decomposing, and that takes the oxygen away from out of the water and creates a oxygen depleted zone which fish can't live in. So these harmful algal blooms have a couple different problems. One is the fact that they deplete oxygen in the water, they destroy the environment in the water, and the other is that they can be toxic. Back to the comparison, fecal indicator bacteria, E. coli, you cannot see them. So you don't have any idea by looking at the water if it's there. So you don't know. You can only test for it, and I'll talk in a minute about the test process. But again, you don't know. You can guess if it's a highly populated area and there's a lot of possible old sewers around, that there may be some contamination. The cyanobacteria, usually, not always, but usually you can see it. It is visible. You have to know what to look for. So on the left-hand side, you guys have probably all seen pictures of cyanobacteria as you've been educated about Lake Waushakum, but on the left-hand side are 4 pictures of 4 different species of cyanobacteria in bloom. And what you're seeing is you see it when it's in bloom. When it's not in bloom, you don't see it because it's usually down on the bottom on the sediments. Very small, barely visible if you were to look closely. You need a microscope generally to see the individual organisms, but when there's a bloom, you can see it, and that's when it's an issue. It's when there's a lot. On the right-hand side, there are some pictures of algal blooms, which are not cyanobacteria. Some of them look similar, some of them don't. But that's the. I'll pass that around. On the back of this are some microscopic images of cyanobacteria, which you can take a look at. But so again, you can see one, you can't see the other generally. And then the last thing I wanted to share was just what's involved in testing. How do you know what these are? For E. coli, for fecal indicator bacteria, the test process is basically you take a water sample. You generally take a sterile water sample, try to protect it from any contamination from you, because you can have E. coli on your hands and things. So we have volunteers who go out and take these samples for us. Anybody who wants to be a volunteer, let me know. We have volunteers who go out. They do a great job. They've been doing this since 1986. A couple have been since the 90s. They collect these samples, and we send the sample to a laboratory which cultures the bacteria with special food, and they basically then count how many bacterial cultures grow from that food. But that's this process for sampling for E. coli. There are 3 labs in the area that can do E. coli testing. If you're interested, one is Pace Analytical in Westboro, another is Neshoba Analytical in Air, and there's Rhode Island Analytical in Rhode Island. Those are the primary 3 that would do that type of testing for you. And you have to take the sample, get the sample to the lab within 6 hours so that they can do the test, so that the bacteria is still alive. That's fecal indicator bacteria, E. coli. The other cyanobacteria, the process for testing is generally visual. The official process is to get a sample with a net or a bottle, and to take it to a lab that has microscope capability and the ability to look at the sample in detail and identify the organisms, whether it is cyanobacteria or not, and identify which type of cyanobacteria it is. There are many different types. There are three primary types that tend to be toxic and tend to be the issue around here. The EPA has set up a website called cyanos.org, cyanos.org. They provide 3 different services that you can make use of there. One is a service to you upload pictures. You can upload a picture of a water sample, and they will help you identify whether or not they think it might have cyanobacteria in it. The second is they sell a kit which includes a microscope and a collection device, some collection devices, and some instructions, and you then take the samples and look at them in a microscope and see if you can identify the things. And the third is support for long-term monitoring, where you sign up to do long-term monitoring of a site, whether you see it or not. Take some microscopic images, share them with them, and they try to keep track of sort of how often and when the cyanobacteria are happening. So cyanos.org is a good resource for cyanobacteria, for understanding it. The other thing I wanted to mention on that is an organization in Worcester called the Worcester Cyano Monitoring Collaborative. Anybody heard of that? Okay, well, it's I think it's given your location here, it's probably a good resource. They have a very active cyanobacteria monitoring program at many different lakes around Worcester, and they check it out. It's at a website, Green Worcester at worcesterma.gov, and basically they have volunteers who do microscopic analysis of water samples there for those lakes around Worcester. They may be interested in collaborating with other lakes, so I would check those out. This I'll pass around. This is just 2 sides. One side is the process for cyanobacteria testing. The other side is the process for for E. coli testing. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was just the process for managing these 2 bacteria. How do you reduce them? Generally, there are different sources and different methods, but generally the method of management is the same. You want to reduce runoff. You want to reduce stormwater runoff that goes into water bodies unfiltered. Reducing runoff is the big thing for E. coli, for fecal indicator bacteria. Fixing leakages in septic systems, in sewer systems, that's management for waste in the water for E. coli bacteria. For cyanobacteria, we want to reduce nutrients. So we want to get rid of all the phosphorus and nitrogen that's on the land, that you put on your lawns. All of that, we want to make sure it doesn't run directly into the water. We want it to go through green infrastructure, go through filtration. I see in these diagrams a lot of filtration ideas, so that's great. But those are, that's what you want to look at, is really reducing that runoff, reducing how much you put on the land near water bodies and how it gets to the water body. So that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Just to feed off of that, so the city has been working hard to make improvements to stormwater systems. We can work really hard to filter things, but really what will help us is the same as recycling, right? We got to reduce first. So if we can reduce the nutrients that are going into lawns, we can make sure everyone's picking up dog waste. That's always a good one. When people are washing their cars, the chemicals are coming in. So we can work hard to filter things, but if we have less that we need to filter out, it would really help. All right, so thank you so much to ORS and to Ben, all the hard work. They've been helping me out. They've also provided education for the Boys and Girls Club. They came out last summer, and we also have a program scheduled with them this summer for the Boys and Girls Club again on the beach, so we're very excited. So thank you very much. Part 2. I will let you introduce yourself. All right. Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Allison. So I'm Scott Bishop, Bishop Land Design. I'm here to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing to come up with a concept design. Actually, we've kind of got 2 ideas here that are going for Waushakum Beach. Would also just like to say, I think, as Ben pointed out, I'm a human ecologist and landscape architect. Rob is working on the architecture and will also join me up here in a little bit to talk about what we're trying to do to replace this beautiful structure. Just kidding. It needs a little bit of work. We've been through a process here, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about. So we have engaged you all. I've seen some of you at the last community engagement meeting, and this is our second to really kind of roll out some of these ideas. One of the ideas is about the idea that this park could serve as an educational piece to understand what we should be doing to make this lake a better and cleaner body of water. And so, as Ben pointed out, some of these features are really about stormwater management and doing it in the right way, but also creating ecological conditions that we can actually have really cool plants and animals that live in some of these pieces of green infrastructure. So as a landscape architect, I utilize nature-based solutions, and we also try to take care of everything that we do on the site too. So as we look at putting in new pathways, we also want to mitigate what we're doing when we do that. So we start at trying to think about how we balance that, and then there are certain regulatory conditions here that we need to respect, setbacks, and there's a cool little grass that grows down here that we're trying to protect. And so all of that comes into play when this is as we're pulling this into formation, as well as what you see here, which is the existing conditions study. And that you can take a look at. That was what I presented at the last community meeting, as well as some of this other information. So people basically looked at it, a series of different materials that they might like for the space, as well as different programs and activities that could be here. Right, we can't have a raceway here, we can't have a football field here, so a lot of things kind of drop out because it's about scale and what is kind of appropriate for a neighborhood park. So you can see some of the results here. Certainly people were still interested in having a beach and sand, as well as having water features, lighting, potentially wood, green roofs, benches and green walls and different materials. So we got an understanding of what that was. And with program, people still want to have a restroom here. I get that, especially if you're going to be playing in a splash pad, which is another thing that came up. Water fountains, as well as being able to bring your kayak in here and back out again. So these are all things that were formative in the design and part of the process. And this is just the beginning, so we want to make sure we know that this is the right course. So a little bit later on, we're going to do some community engagement with you all, like a couple more tools to verify that we're on the right track, right? Because that's what design is. It's not just me standing up here going, this is a great idea because it's my idea. It's about you guys telling me what you want and then figuring out how we put it all together. All right, so you guys can take a look at that. Basically, we have kind of an initial couple of sketches. Rob and I and the team work together to flesh out ideas, right? That's how we do this. We had design charrettes. We meet with the client every other week. And we kind of came up with what we would say the current design option, which we would call the conceptual design. So I'm going to walk over here. So the two things that we're looking at here are basically the baseline plan, which we think is kind of the core needs that we heard from the community. And then we have the maximum plan. And the maximum plan is like everything that you guys talked about wanting, as well as things that we thought were necessary, like filtration of the water in cool and interesting ways. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So there are two differences here. Some of the things that are the same is creating a vegetated buffer for the roadway. If you guys, I'm sure, have heard the cars passing every time one passes here. So we want to try to tamp that down a bit. As well, we also want to create a richer ecological edge, as we're moving in here and reduce the amount of sand, which is problematic. What we're also bringing into both are a series of splash pads, and we're going to change that playground, which is maybe not the happiest place on the planet as a playground, and improve that as well. So those are the kind of things that are common amongst these, as well as increased vegetation, native vegetation, which we've seen charted very high in the last round of community engagement. So pollinators and native vegetation being part of the park, not just lawn, grass, asphalt concrete, right? So really bringing habitat back, which again is going to help improve the quality of the water. So just to get into some of the details here, you can see on this panel, we are going to just look at the difference between the maximum and the minimum schemes. So this is kind of looking at the beach. So from there, kind of looking in that direction. And you can see the differences. In the second scheme, we have a boardwalk that kind of defines the edge between the resource area, which is where that sedge is over here. And again, that's something that we want to save and is an important natural resource. And so we're defining that edge, which we hope is going to keep folks from kind of trotting it down, creating issues. In the minimum scheme, we're still creating an edge, but we're not creating a boardwalk. You know, there's advantages and disadvantages to both of those. And what you can see here, I think this is a really cool example of some of the things that we're looking at in this are we have what we're calling a microforest. I don't know, they're kind of cool if anybody's kind of heard of those lately. It's really trying to add and increase a lot of vegetation and improves the soil quality and improves habitat. So in the area over here that we call the Grove, where all the oak trees are, that's where we would be doing that improvement. And that's part of the baseline scheme because, again, that charted really high with folks. And reducing that amount of lawn. Lawn doesn't really filter out nitrogen and phosphorus as much as other plant materials, and then changing again the grades as we make our way down, right? Having highs and having lows is going to help us focus stormwater, not have it drain directly into the lake. And so you can see that here. We still have areas where people can lay out on lawns, and then we have, in the different schemes, we have one that's really just, again, different types of vegetation, and then increasing the quantity of deck surfaces. So some people don't really like laying in sand. Some people like hanging out on decks. So that was one of the things that we looked at there. And then having a dock that extends out into the water for fishing and maybe another point of entry, but still protecting the edge of the sedge. The coolest kind of thing here that we're looking at, which I think is kind of futuristic, but also very interesting, is to actually pull and draw water from the lake and use it in an algal system where we basically take the nutrients and we eat up those nutrients with a special type of algae that's not harmful, but is actually used in different kinds of feedstocks for makeup, for bioplastics, and even biofuel. And we're working with the National Algal Association to think about how that technology might work. But you can see that demonstrated here. We can actually use them as shade structures and then connect that to a central system. So when we talk about this park being something that demonstrates what we can do, these are some of the cutting edge technologies that we could be utilizing in order to demonstrate those things. Again, you can take a closer look. We are proposing in both schemes a floating wetland, and we're also really, you can see some blow-ups here of some of the water quality tactics that we're utilizing, as well as, getting a feel for the kinds of play equipment and the bench seating that we would have, again, in and around the splash pad. What you see in the maximum plan here, you can see these solar fountains that adds aeration and oxygen to the water when it's in low oxygen condition. So that's going to help mitigate. That doesn't help solve the problem, but it helps mitigate the problem. But it's also a really cool thing to have around and for people to experience. You can see the different places where we have the algal tubes. And then we're also proposing a solar waterfall, again, for aeration, but also a unique feature in the park as you kind of get to the more forested area. Obviously, the beach side in both schemes is really active and has a lot of different characteristics that we think are fitting for an active park. So we've kind of kept those things separate, but the pathway systems really bind things together. I'm going to pass it to Rob.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Marklow. I'm with Kuthraneri Architects, and we're working with Bishop Land Design on this project. We've been through a number of iterations with the building. We heard loud and clear some of the priorities at the first community meeting. One really important one, obviously, is that the park is really split between the beach side and the park side. So and we're thinking of this. This building was originally built at a time when this was a bathing beach, as in a place that you would go to bathe, and so the needs were really different than needs are now. So in both our schemes, we're actually looking at the same core building, which is significantly smaller than this one. It's about 1/3 the size. And then so in terms of the minimal and maximal scheme, really that just relates to a canopy piece. And so we've looked at a few different versions. You can see some of our earlier iterations up here. The building itself, it's really important how it relates to the surroundings in the site. So the neighborhood, the parking, things that are happening at the street. How does the building function as a gateway to the park? How does it relate to the playground and splash pad, obviously to the beach? That's a really important component. If there's going to be a dock element, then how is it relating to that, as well as any boardwalks and the park area on the other side? Generally, what we investigated schemes that run both parallel to the road as well as perpendicular, how this building is oriented, and we landed on one that's perpendicular to the road. And the reason for that is because although this building in its current configuration perpendicular does block the views, by shrinking it, we're addressing that issue, and we're also in the same time maintaining really good visibility from the street and the neighborhood out towards the water, which I think we all agree that's the view. So we've minimized the building in that dimension. And again, it's a very simple building, just two single-user restrooms or family restrooms, a small area for lifeguards, some storage, and mechanical systems which could serve the splash pad. Again, it's a really simple building, so the idea here is looking at canopy space. So one of the things that we wanted to create with this building is an opportunity for shade, a shaded place on the site for sitting, as well as kind of a moment of repose going from the bathroom and as you enter the park, giving you a moment before you're out in the sun on the beach. We looked in our baseline scheme at a much more limited canopy, and then enlarged it in the maximal scheme. And the idea here is that the building is really part of the park, and as we're seeing it now, we're anticipating bringing a lot of plantings and natural materials into the horizontal landscape, and we wanted to bring that in and up onto the building. So we did look at options, including green roofs. And the scheme that we landed on is actually it's an economical system. It's a building mounted trellis, and so there's a couple different systems. It's either a cable system or kind of a wire mesh system, and the plants from the landscape will actually grow up and form a really beautiful texture on the building itself, which will, depending on the species, will actually change with the seasons. And so here you start to see a few views. Again, there's a more the baseline scheme, which is a fairly minimal canopy. Here you can see those views out through the building under that canopy, as well as from the dock piece looking back towards the building and the street. With the maximal scheme, it's just an enlarged canopy. It's a fairly simple scheme. We think it's appropriate to the site, and it integrates well with the concepts that Scott and his team have put together. So we're really excited about this as a concept, but we're really looking forward to hearing your feedback on it. Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Let me talk a little bit about the community engagement tools that we're going to use here tonight. One of them is really fun. You get to spend money, so that's great. You're going to spend. Unfortunately, you don't have to. Fortunately, you don't have to put your own money in. Unfortunately, you are, because you're paying taxes, so you're kind of paying for it anyway. That's a really bad joke. Tax jokes, not that funny. But the first one that you can see here, this is buckets and bucks. So everybody's going to get 1,000 Waushakum bucks, which we're going to hand out. You can put your entire wad of money into one of these if you want. So read what's on the bucket. They've all been translated. So if anyone needs to read it in another language, we think we've covered the majority of the ones that people speak around here. And you can figure out what you're doing is you're helping us to prioritize. We have a maximum scheme. I think it's really cool. I think everyone here thinks it's probably really cool. We also have to understand that is probably really, really expensive and potentially outside of what we can do here. We don't know that yet, but what we do know is we are going to have to prioritize what you guys really want. So this is going to help us do that. So if you really, really want something, maybe you put in more money on that one than something else. If you want everything, you can spread it all out. And if it all comes back even in every bucket, I'm going to go over to Jim and I'm going to go, I don't know, I guess we have to do everything. So that's the first one. Again, we've got Lori will help pass out the bucks there. And then what we have here is a gamut chart. So that's it's actually a fun way visually to see what you guys are prioritizing. But this isn't about like the individual amenities, which are kind of here. This is about what you want the park to be. So, and what kind of things are really important to you. So the first one here says demonstrates how people and landscapes can clean up the lake, right? That's something that we talked about. If you guys are like, you guys are always talking about that, but that's not one of my priorities, then you can say you strongly disagree with that. Now this is a whole, you can put it right on the line on any one of these, right? These are just helping you to kind of read it down here, but as you chart these things in the gamut, we get an understanding of like what is resonating with you about like what we're talking about. In the last community engagement, you said supporting biodiversity and pollination. That was really important in the last community engagement. Let's see if everybody else strongly agrees with that as they did prior, or if there's a difference there. So there's a whole series here. You know, you can all strongly agree with all of these. You could all strongly disagree with all of these. That is not, there's no winning or losing in this. It's really about us understanding if what we've done in this process is resonating with you folks in the neighborhood and creating the kind of park that you want, because that's really what we're trying to do here. Those are the two tools that we're going to use tonight. I'm going to be walking around, and if you have any questions, I'm here just to answer questions directly about any of this. So you can just come on up, take a look at all the boards again, do some community engagement, have some water, and again, ask any questions. That's where we're at right now in the process. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Please, I invite you to come up and take a look at the schematics.